You're watching the Ruslan Belov channel, and today we're going to discuss the situation in Ukraine as of May 17th, 2025. A tremendous number of events took place today, so let's get started. There has been notably high activity by the armed forces of the Russian Federation along the entire line of contact, from the Kherson direction all the way to the northern part of the Kupiansk front. Today, some pro-Russian analysts and fairly reliable cartographers marked a new batch of islands along the Dnipro River. According to pro-Russian sources, the islands located between the settlements of Lvov, Korsunka, Burgunka, Drodokamenka, Kazatske and Novokakhovka have come under full control of the Russian armed forces. Let me remind you that this is not the first time we're hearing that Russian forces have managed to significantly expand their control zone along the Dnipro. Over the past few weeks, we've repeatedly discussed this topic. We previously talked about how Russian troops fully secured the islands near the settlement of Tyahinka. According to certain pro-Russian experts, Russian army reconnaissance and sabotage groups are calmly operating on the Ukrainian-controlled side and feel quite free to move. There has also been information indicating that Russian units regularly enter the area near the settlements of Pridniprovsk and Sadov. A kind of buffer zone has been established there as well. Additionally, we're regularly receiving reports about control over the islands near the settlement of Kizumis. Regarding the Ukrainian side, the situation appears rather grim, and this is confirmed by both Ukrainian and Russian sources. Reports suggest that the Ukrainian armed forces maintain a relatively weak troop presence in this area. Apparently, the Ukrainian command has placed its hopes on the Dnipro River, acting as a natural barrier that could, at the very least, slow down any Russian advance should one begin. However, there is also information indicating that Ukrainian units are staying as close as possible to settlements, not leaving their perimeters. There are specific strongpoints along the Dnipro, and Ukrainian units are not venturing beyond them, which in turn allows Russian reconnaissance and sabotage groups to operate in this sector of the front with relative ease. Today, footage was also published showing a Russian flag raised in the settlement of Mykolaiivka. This flag was not raised by a reconnaissance group or by regular Russian army troops. According to the author of the video, the flag was installed using a drone. Of course, since this was done by drone, the area will not be marked as controlled on maps based solely on this footage. But it is still a significant signal for Ukrainian troops in this area. Let me remind you that during the latest round of negotiations in Istanbul, Russia issued demands for Ukraine to withdraw from all four contested regions: Donetsk, Zaporizhzhia, Kherson and Luhansk, including, of course, the city of Kherson. So it appears preparations may be underway along the islands. That said, if you're asking for my opinion, I don't expect any major river crossing operation aimed at establishing a bridgehead or regaining control over the city of Kherson in the near future. Such an operation seems unlikely at this point. However, I'd like to remind you that during the negotiation process, particularly the American side, repeatedly insisted that if any peace agreement is signed between Ukraine and Russia, the Russian Federation must guarantee Ukraine safe passage along the Dnipro, especially in those parts where the front lines are closest together. This very likely refers to this specific sector of the front. So perhaps, in order to gain the strongest possible negotiating position, the Russian side is now seeking to take full control over all the islands. And even if Russia later decides against a full offensive, or if some diplomatic solution is reached where things remain as they are, having control over all the islands would severely limit Ukraine's ability to use this part of the Dnipro. It could even be considered Russian territorial waters under some future agreement. So we're seeing high activity here, but not yet a full river crossing. It's mainly reconnaissance groups, possibly preparing a bridgehead, in case something needs to be done quickly. Next, we move on to the southern Donetsk sector, which is seeing major developments. Today, the main focus is on the settlement of Bohatyr. Just look at the number of map markers and icons. Most of the icons are flags, which shows the intensity of updates, both confirmed and unconfirmed. And the key news is that Russian units have taken full control of the settlement of Bohatyr as a result of combat operations. Throughout the day, reports came in about heavy fighting in the area. In the following footage, you can see how the battles unfolded and how the fight for Bohatyr was conducted. Many small combat episodes are shown over 2 minutes and 49 seconds. In this footage, we also see numerous scenes of Russian soldiers raising flags in various parts of Bohatyr, calmly and without hiding behind ruins or trees. That's significant. Why? Because earlier today, pro-Ukrainian sources, specifically the mapping service Deep State, published a report stating that Ukraine's 33rd Mechanized Brigade had launched a counterattack on Bohatyr. According to those sources, Ukrainian forces had cleared 90% of the settlement and pushed out the Russian units. As supposed evidence, the pro-Ukrainian cartographers showed footage from the southwestern edge of Bohatyr, where we see a Ukrainian flag emerging from the ruins. Later, however, some sources suggested that this flag was likely placed by a drone, a situation quite similar to what we saw earlier near Kherson. Still, the footage was released, and the 33rd Mechanized Brigade was featured, and everything looked quite convincing. That report came out early on the morning of May 17, 2025. Soon after, Russian sources began publishing updates and corrections to maps, along with reports on the unfolding combat. Just minutes before the preparation of this video, fresh footage appeared showing multiple Russian flags raised across different parts of Bohatyr. These aren't just random ruins, these are clear objective control videos showing not only flags, but also Russian soldiers standing calmly, not worried about artillery or FPV drone strikes. This is solid evidence that Bohatyr, or at least most of it, is now under confident Russian control. As for the details, Russian troops made significant advances today. Not just progress, but a breakthrough. Early in the day, reports came in about the clearing of the northwestern and western outskirts. Then came reports of fighting near local farms, and by the end of the day, there were reports that Bohatyr had been fully secured, along with several tree lines to the west. In other words, a large chunk of territory in the Bohatyr direction came under control. Let's compare maps to get a clearer picture. As of May 16th, according to geolocations and objective control footage from yesterday, the map showed most of Bohatyr either in the grey zone or under Ukrainian control. Russian troops weren't even close, except around the settlement of Otradne. Now, by May 17, 2025, the situation looks very different. Yes, the situation with the farmlands is still unconfirmed, but the updates were published by reliable pro-Russian cartographers, as well as by a Telegram channel affiliated with the Vostok troop grouping. This Telegram channel has been a key source all day long, with many referencing it for updates. And this is also where the flag videos were first posted. There is little doubt at this point. We are, of course, awaiting further geolocations, possibly from the Russian Ministry of Defense, but there is no longer much uncertainty. It is highly likely that the settlement of Otradne is now semi-encircled. There is a high probability that within the next 24 to 48 hours, the Ukrainian armed forces may be forced to retreat from Otradne toward the next line of defensive strongpoints near the settlement of Komar. So, the front line in the Bohatyr direction has definitively collapsed. There's no doubt about that. It's hard to say whether the Russian army will continue advancing westward beyond Otradne toward Komar. Most likely, they may not move forward immediately, instead opting to assess the overall state of the Ukrainian defenses. But one thing is certain, Russian forces will continue to advance and try to push Ukrainian units out of the village of Alexeyevka, where fighting is still ongoing. Over the past 24 hours, most activity has been observed in the northern and northeastern outskirts. Specifically, Russian units have been gradually moving through the fields, closing in on Ukrainian strongpoints north of the village. In this footage, published by Ukraine's 35th Marine Brigade, we can see a Russian soldier trying to knock down a drone with his rifle butt. Based on these visuals, a small area was mapped out and marked, meaning the battle here is either over or nearing its final stage, referred to as the Battle for Alexeyevka. However, I'll repeat, there is a very high likelihood that the AFU won't be able to hold Alexeyevka for long, as the assault from Bohatyr will most likely follow immediately. It's also possible that Russian forces are already storming the western outskirts, approaching from the north, though Ukrainian strongholds in the area may pose resistance. But from the south, Russia may face fewer obstacles. So that wraps up this section, and we move on. Next, we'll look at the situation on the Pokrovsk front. where Russian forces are steadily advancing toward the southwestern outskirts of the town of Pokrovsk and the entire Pokrovsk urban area. New footage was published showing a Ukrainian stronghold, which was promptly geolocated on the map. We can see that Russia is gradually expanding its control in the southwestern suburbs and attempting to straighten the front line. This stronghold has been targeted in recent strikes, and the footage clearly indicates preparations for a coming assault. The goal is to establish a stronger foothold within the red zone on the map. It's worth noting that as recently as yesterday, some pro-Russian mappers and analysts reported that Russian troops had taken full control of the village of Zverevo. That information has yet to be officially confirmed, but we can clearly see that Russian forces are extending their control around Zverevo, as well as in the areas of Peshchenoye and Shevchenko. This region includes a railway line, a key objective, and indicates the formation of a southwestern foothold for the Pokrovsk direction. It's unclear when the full-scale assault on Pokrovsk will begin, but it now seems just a matter of time. Now we move to the eastern flank. Here, there have been numerous map adjustments and geolocated events. Regarding Myrol-Lubivka, a key village, today, pro-Ukrainian cartographers from Deep State confirmed that Russian units have entered the village. However, they still deny that Myrol-Lubivka is under full Russian control, despite footage from yesterday showing a Russian soldier waving a flag near local farms. So for now, they consider the area a grey zone. In parallel, Russian forces are storming the village of Novopoltavka. Some pro-Russian mappers have already marked Novopoltavka as fully under Russian control. But geolocation shows Russian troops only approaching the northern outskirts. Ukrainian sources today published footage of another armored assault by Russian columns, targeting not only Novopoltavka but also positions to its west. In this video, we can observe a Russian column advancing toward farms located north of the village of Malinivka. Note the ponds and buildings. The footage confirms Russian vehicles reaching these areas. We also see footage from central Novopoltavka, where Russian equipment came under attack. Based on this footage, map adjustments were made to the southern part of central Novopoltavka, and the ponds and farms north of Malinivka were also marked. This hints at potential future Russian plans, namely to advance along Highway N32 and drive a wedge between Pokrovsk and the town of Kostiantynivka. Now we move toward the Kliebanbek pocket. Here, the Russian army is advancing along the western outskirts with almost no resistance. On the western side, according to open-source data, Ukraine has not built a well-fortified layered defense since 2014. As a result, the only obstacles for Russian troops are the tree lines, which are manned by Ukrainian forces but lack strong fortifications, no trenches, bunkers, or dragon's teeth. These are simply hastily dug defensive lines created in recent weeks. Russian forces are exploiting this weakness, pushing through the forest belts. Footage shows heavy FPV drone strikes on Ukrainian positions. Ukraine is unable to bring in reinforcements for full control, so the Russian army continues to advance through these wooded areas. The main objective here is to penetrate deep enough to reach Highway N20, creating a potential encirclement of Ukrainian forces still holding the settlements of Stara Mykolaiivka, Hanativka, and Zarya. Today, some pro-Russian sources also reported that Russian troops have entered Romanivka. Fighting has now begun in that area, and this marks a serious psychological blow to Ukrainian forces. Romanivka isn't just another small village like Oleksandrivka. It lies directly on Highway N20, which is no longer just a supply route. It's now a lifeline for evacuating encircled AFU units between Hanativka and Stara Mykolaiivka. So far, Russia is not rushing to storm these towns, preferring instead to keep the pocket under pressure. Next, we move to the Toretsk sector. Here, the fighting is centered around southern Dilayevka and the nearby railway station. Russian forces are advancing along both the western rail flank and the northern outskirts. Most importantly, we now have visual confirmation of active combat at the Dilayevka railway station, a critical Ukrainian stronghold and defensive node before any further advance toward Kostiantynivka. Based on recent map adjustments, there is a high chance that within the next 2 to 3 days, both the village and the station will fall under full Russian control. Between Kostiantynivka and Pokrovsk, we are witnessing what may become a serious operational crisis for Ukraine's forces. The Russian army continues to push forward, And as we predicted months ago, 3, 4, even 6 months back, the decisive battle of 2025 may unfold right here. So far, Russia clearly holds the initiative on this front. We'll keep watching how the situation evolves. As for Chasiv Yar, no significant changes. Footage continues to show strikes on Ukrainian positions near Druzhkivka, Druzhkivske, and Kostyantinivka, but no frontline shifts have been reported. Russian forces maintain their hold in central Chasiv Yar. It's still unclear whether they've fully cleared the area or if isolated AFU resistance remains. On the Siversk front, no changes. Strikes continue against the eastern outskirts and high-rise areas, but there's been no movement in or around Verkhnyokamyanske, Hrihorivka, or Serebryanka. On the Lyman axis, a strange situation is unfolding around Toretsk. A few days ago, Russia's Ministry of Defense claimed full control over the village. Yet today, Ukrainian sources published footage of counterattacks, during which Ukrainian troops reportedly regained control over certain parts of Toretsk. We're awaiting further geolocated evidence, as the current reports appear to have timeline inconsistencies, suggesting that the events shown may have occurred before May 9th, prior to the so-called May Truce. In the Kupiansk North sector, no changes. Russian forces continue striking the northwestern part of the town to weaken Ukrainian positions and potentially expand their foothold near Dvorichna and Zapadne. As for the northernmost front lines, also no changes. However, there is some increased Russian activity around Hlibok and Lukyansk. It looks like something may be brewing here and could unfold in the near future. That's all for now. Subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and stay connected.